everyone, it's Shar. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new here. So happy to have you here. It is August 1st, which means it's officially time for my July wrap up. In case you've never seen one of these before, the way that I do it tends to follow the format of Mara from Books Like Whoa and Meg from Meg with Books. Not exactly, but I like to have a clean structure. So we start with my stats for the month of July, the month we just completed, and then I will tell you a little bit about some of the standout books for the month, whether that be standout in a good way or standout in a bad way. But without further ado, let's jump in to stats. By the way, if I sound weird, I'm sick, so I'm super nasally, and that's a fun time for everyone. So in the month of July, I actually think I had one of my better reading months, just in terms of the amount of books that I was reading and how much I was enjoying all of them. I ended up reading 14 books in the month of July for a total of 4,500 pages and an average book length of 321 or so pages. That makes sense to me. Month of July, I was doing Summerween, I was doing a KU readathon, and I was reading a full-length novel. So 321 pages sounds about right to me for an average book length. In the month of July, it was pretty meh in terms of ratings. I didn't have any 1 stars, so that's a good thing. I ended up with 3 2 stars, 6 3 stars, 4 4 stars, and 1 5 star. For the ratings, yes, I do have 0.5 or so, but for these videos and for these stats, I don't include 0.5s. I will round up or down according to my feelings for that, for a total average star rating of 3.21. Not the worst, but I've definitely had months where I've had higher rated books. If we're speaking about where I got these books from, this is where I'm kind of showing my ass here, because my goal was to read off my physical TBR, and you'll see I very much did not do that. I got 3 books from the library, so yay for utilizing my local library. 3 books from Kindle Unlimited, because I mentioned I was doing a KU readathon as part of Riley's Patreon. 2 books from Script, 1 book on Audible, and then in terms of all of those books that I was reading and where I was getting them from, 6 of those books I did own. What that means, I owned it on Audible, I owned an ebook of it, or I owned the book physically.
I only own like 2 of those books physically.
Okay, and then in terms of formats that I was reading in, I read 3 books physically, I read 5 books as an ebook, and I read 6 books as an audiobook. And that's it. Those are my stats. They're not perfect, but I think that July was a pretty great reading month simply because of I was enjoying all of the books. They don't all have to be perfect, even a 3 star. It's like a good time. So I'm glad that overall I was having a good time. Plus, in the month of June, I only read 2 books, and July was actually a busier month for me. If you don't watch my vlogs, I spent most of the month of July doing interviews and finding a new job. So I'm happy that I was able to read that much and enjoy so many books this month. Now let's talk about some standouts for the month of July. This is gonna be a pretty quick video. I think this is my fastest wrap up like ever. My favorite book of the month was Deceived by the Gargoyles by Lillian Lark. I read this during my one and only time I will ever do a 24-hour reading challenge where I read 24 hours straight. If you haven't seen that video, I'll link it here so you can watch it. I read this during that readathon at about 4 o'clock in the morning. Could that contribute to why it was my favorite? It sure could, but this is a book about a woman who is a witch. She's having a hard time in the dating world because people are really kind of taking advantage of her. She's coming from a very, very wealthy, prominent, famous, magical family, and anyone who dates her really just wants connections with her, and she is like a plus-size gal, and they have a lot to say about it. She gets fed up, so she goes to see a matchmaker for magical creatures. She gets matched to this guy. They have a great connection. He's a gargoyle, but he has 2 other mates, and she enters their relationship with her now 3 mates. It's not a why choose necessarily. I mean, it's a why choose. What I'm saying is they all sleep with each other. They're all in a relationship with each other. It's not just the men with the women. They are all together. They are all very much in love, very happy, and the smut scenes in here were great. I love monster romance, so it should come as no surprise to you that I'm getting closer to the screen, but no surprise to you that a monster romance would top my list for the month of July. I mentioned this in that video, but if you read Titan, by Gillian Graves, I want to say. The book is here, so you can see it. If you read that book, I think that you would enjoy this one. It's very, very good and has a lot of very similar themes and styles. The most disappointing book is, unfortunately, That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Human by Kimberly Lemming. You all know I love That Time I Got Drunk and Yeeted a Love Potion at a Werewolf. Loved that book so much, so I was so excited about this one, with the basic premise being a woman has been taken from like her small town several years ago. She's being held captive by this other dragon. One day another dragon that we're familiar with comes and rescues her. They're obviously mates and they're going around getting up to mischief and mayhem. While this was cute and cozy, and I did give it 3 stars and I enjoyed it, there wasn't really enough of a coherent plot for me to enjoy this. And I think that where I went wrong is that I purchased this as the ebook as soon as it came out, and I actually prefer the audiobooks for these books. There's no doubt in my mind that if I had been listening to the audiobooks, I would have enjoyed this a lot more, but as it is, it was 3 stars and it was disappointing because I wanted it to be 5 stars, and that's no one's fault but my own. The most surprising book was Ascension by Nicholas Finch. This is surprising because I honestly put this on my 2023 like anticipated releases on a whim. I saw it. I was intrigued by the premise of a snowy mountain in the middle of the ocean that appears out of nowhere. I hadn't read sci-fi horror before and thought it would be fun, and it was really fun. It was surprising for me because I was surprised by how beautifully written this was, and also by just like how many thought-provoking questions there are. If the idea of contemplating life and creation and the universe and truly the like unending scope of how big the universe is doesn't frighten you, then this book's not gonna frighten you. But if it does and you're into like the weird sci-fi stuff, you're gonna enjoy this book. You all know me, I definitely am into the weird sci-fi stuff, so this book worked really, really well for me. And what surprised me is that even days and weeks after, I was still thinking about a lot of the things that happened in this book, and just like this very specific line at this very specific scene that just like melted my heart and just made me go, oh my gosh. Be warned, there definitely are content warnings in here. You should look them up. There definitely are undertones of religious conversation in here. You should know that. If that is not your thing, this book is not for you. But if you're like, that's not gonna bother me, give this book a go. The one book that I would recommend most broadly, this is a new question that I'm answering, and I'm including it as I would recommend this book to most people. I think that most people could enjoy this book, specifically if you were a Goosebumps kid, if you like books in fall settings, if you like Halloween, if you like cozy atmosphere, if you're looking for a book that will help you turn your brain off, then I think this book will help you do all of that, and that is 13s by Kate Alice Marshall. Yes, this is a middle grade, but if you're not familiar with Kate Alice Marshall's writing style, even in her middle grade and her YA, it is very much accessible to the age group that she is writing towards, but it is also including a lot of things that I think that an older audience could enjoy. Obviously, you're not critiquing a middle grade at the level that you are critiquing an adult fiction, but it is still such a good time, and the atmosphere in here is really great. This is the story of a young girl. What's her name? Totally forgot her name because I've got the names of everybody. Anyway, circumstances have led her to have to move in with her aunts and uncle in this very small town. She is turning 13 on Halloween. Things are really weird in this town, and there are 2 other kids who she becomes friends with who are also turning 13 on Halloween, and they get the sense and the impression that perhaps they're about to be sacrificed and they're trying to not have that happen to them. This has a lot of like fairy tale elements, and as I mentioned, if you really enjoyed Goosebumps, if you liked Halloween Town, if you liked what's that movie? I always want to call it the Sanderson sister movie. That's not what it's called. Hocus Pocus. There it is. If you liked Hocus Pocus, this book has that kind of energy and that vibe all woven in with fairy tale in it. If that is your thing, this is the book I would most widely recommend because I think it's just like an easy read and at baseline is very cozy and enjoyable. And I haven't answered this in a video before, but I would love to reflect on the month of July and the videos that I posted and just thinking about what some of my favorite videos of the month have been. I've definitely seen Gabby do this. I think it's just interesting for me as a creator to think about which ones have been my favorites. I would say that my first Summerween vlog, if you haven't seen it, it's right here, is one of my favorites just because I always have so much fun with the editing of Summerween vlogs. You can see things like me going to the beach and just like what I was reading in that time. And I would also say that it is my 24-hour readathon, where I read for 24 hours straight because that was a challenge. But even though it was a challenge mentally, and I was absolutely delirious by the end of it, I still had a really fun time doing it and just like was able to get so much reading done. But that does bring us to the end of this video. As always, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what your favorite book of the month was, or what you're planning to read this August. And if you are not already, please do subscribe. It really just supports me and this channel, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!